When alien leaders panicked when they saw Deathworlders treat a galactic superweapon as a toy ### Part 1. First contact. The 3 moons of Centauri Prime cast long shadows across the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. Around the massive crystalline table sat representatives of the 12 most advanced species in the known universe. They had gathered for what many considered the most troubling discovery in recent history. They call themselves humans, Ambassador Trill said, his translucent appendages trembling slightly as he projected images onto the central display. Their homeworld is classified as a Class 5 death world. A collective shudder rippled through the chamber. Most species present evolved on worlds with stable climates, predictable seasons, and minimal natural disasters. The concept of a species surviving, let alone thriving, on a planet with such extreme conditions seemed impossible. Massive temperature variations, constant geological activity, lethal atmospheric events, and over 60% water coverage, continued Trill, his voice growing higher with each terrifying detail. And yet, they've not only survived but built a civilization. Admiral Orcs, the oldest member of the Council and representative of the militaristic Tauran coalition, leaned forward. His scaled face showed rare concern. Are they hostile? Unknown, replied Trill. Our observation probes indicate they frequently engage in conflict among themselves, but also display remarkable cooperation. They appear unpredictable. Director Vex of the Science Directorate adjusted her breathing apparatus before speaking. What truly concerns us is their resilience. Their bodies can withstand radiation levels that would kill most of us instantly. They routinely ingest substances that would be classified as poison on our worlds. Most alarming, they continue functioning despite physical injuries that would incapacitate any civilized being. The room fell silent as the Council absorbed this information. It was High Chancellor Moore who finally spoke, his ancient voice barely above a whisper. We must establish contact. The Charter demands we welcome all sentient species. The decision to send a diplomatic vessel to Earth wasn't unanimous, but necessity outweighed fear. 2 cycles later, the Council's most advanced ship, the Harmony, entered Earth's orbit. Captain James Miller squinted at the massive alien vessel through the space station's viewport. At 45, he had spent most of his career preparing humanity for this moment, though most people thought he was wasting government funding on a fantasy. Well, would you look at that, he said, a smile spreading across his weathered face. Turns out we're not alone after all. Beside him, Lieutenant Ryan Clark looked less enthusiastic. Sir, are you sure I should be on the welcome team? I'm not exactly diplomat material. Miller laughed, slapping Clark on the back hard enough to make him stumble. That's exactly why I want you there. These aliens need to see real humans, not just politicians in suits. The first meeting took place in a hastily prepared conference room. The alien delegation entered cautiously, their movements precise and delicate. Their apparent leader, who introduced himself as Ambassador Trill, seemed to flinch when Miller extended his hand in greeting. On behalf of humanity, welcome to Earth, Miller said, his voice booming in the quiet room. What the humans didn't understand was that Ambassador Trill and his team were experiencing pure terror. The casual way these Deathworlders moved, their loud voices, their alarming habit of showing teeth, it all signaled danger to the Council species. When Miller accidentally knocked over a water glass, 2 of the alien delegates visibly recoiled. When he quickly cleaned it up with his bare hands, muttering an apology and a joke about Earth's gravity, they exchanged horrified glances. These creatures treated potential harm with indifference. What else might they consider trivial that the rest of the galaxy found unthinkably dangerous? The Council had encountered Deathworlders before, but never ones so alarmingly casual about their own survival. And never ones with such potential. When alien leaders panicked when they saw Deathworlders treat a galactic superweapon as a toy ## Part 2. The threat emerges 2 Earth months after first contact. The Galactic Council's initial fears about humans had only intensified. Council representatives watched in horror as humans casually engaged in activities they considered suicidal, climbing mountains for fun, diving into ocean depths for sport, and worst of all, experimenting with potentially dangerous alien technology out of curiosity. Captain Miller had been appointed Earth's official representative to the Council, much to Ambassador Trill's dismay. The humans' tendency to speak plainly and make jokes during serious discussions left many Council members clutching their comfort stones. You must understand, Captain Miller, High Chancellor Moore explained during an emergency session, the Council has existed for 12,000 years by exercising extreme caution. Miller leaned back in his chair, which was designed for a species with 3 support limbs and made him look like a child sitting in an adult's furniture. Chancellor, with all due respect, humanity didn't get to space by being overly cautious. A series of alarm chirps and whistles filled the chamber as translators struggled to convey the shocking statement in a dozen alien languages. The emergency session had been called for a reason far more serious than human recklessness. A new threat had emerged from the darkness beyond known space. Director Vex activated the central display, showing a star system on the outer rim of Council territory. The images showed a planet with massive black ships in orbit. As the Council watched, energy beams from the ships struck the planet's sun. The star's natural rhythm began to destabilize, its surface erupting with massive solar flares. This footage was transmitted 3 days ago, Vex said quietly. The Harmony colony is now gone. Over 4 million citizens perished when their sun went supernova prematurely. Miller sat up straight, his previous casual demeanor vanishing. Who did this? Admiral Corex's scales darkened with anger. They call themselves the Void Harvesters. They've existed on the fringes of our knowledge for centuries, but never posed a direct threat until now. What changed? Miller asked, his eyes fixed on the dying star in the recording. They've discovered the stellar disruptor, Ambassador Trill said, his voice trembling. A weapon of unimaginable power, created eons ago by a now extinct race. We thought all traces of it had been destroyed. Lieutenant Clark, who had been quietly observing from behind Miller, spoke up. So they can destabilize stars? Make them go boom? Several council members visibly recoiled at his simplistic description of planetary extinction. Precisely, Vex confirmed. The disruptor alters the fundamental forces within a star, accelerating its life cycle. A stable star can be turned into a supernova in days. Admiral Corex slammed his armored fist on the table. We must assemble the defense fleet immediately. The defense fleet hasn't engaged in actual combat in over 300 years, Chancellor Moore reminded him. Our weapons are designed for peacekeeping, not war. Miller watched the fear spreading through the chamber. These beings had created a peaceful civilization spanning thousands of worlds, but they had forgotten how to fight. Their carefully terraformed planets, designed for comfort rather than resilience, would fall one by one to an enemy wielding a starkiller. Earth will help, Miller said firmly. We've fought wars before. We understand conflict. The council chamber fell silent. The idea of accepting help from Deathworlders, of potentially arming them, was terrifying. Yet the alternative seemed worse. There's more, Vex said, breaking the silence. Our intelligence suggests the Void Harvesters are particularly interested in Earth. They see Deathworlders as a potential threat to their expansion. Miller's expression hardened. Then it seems we have a common enemy. As the council debated, Miller sent a private message to Earth Command, potential extinction level threat. Recommend immediate preparation for galactic-scale conflict. What Miller didn't tell the council was that humanity had already begun studying alien technology in ways that would horrify them. If there was a superweapon out there, humans would find it. And unlike the cautious council races, they wouldn't hesitate to use it or improve it. When alien leaders panicked when they saw Deathworlders treat a galactic superweapon as a toy. Part 3. The discovery. The rust-colored dust of Mars swirled around the excavation site as Dr. Lisa Reynolds wiped her brow, leaving a smudge across her forehead. For 3 weeks, her team had been digging into what appeared to be an artificial structure buried beneath the Martian surface. The council representatives had insisted on accompanying the expedition, though they remained sealed in their environmental suits, watching the humans work with a mixture of fascination and dread. I think we've found the entrance, called out Dr. Reynolds, her voice crackling through the comm system. She brushed away centuries of dust from what appeared to be a control panel. Jake, bring the portable power unit. Jake Thompson, the team's engineer, lugged over equipment that would have required 3 Lemurian assistants to move. The council observer, scientist observer Nix, watched with unease as the humans casually handled delicate instruments in the harsh Martian environment. Dr. Reynolds, Nix's translated voice sounded nervous. Our records indicate this region of Mars was visited by the ancients. Any technology found here should be approached with extreme caution. Reynolds nodded absently. Noted observer Nix. We'll be careful. What the aliens considered careful, and what humans meant by the word were dramatically different concepts. Within hours, Reynolds' team had powered up the ancient door mechanism and were preparing to enter. Shouldn't we wait for a security team? Nix suggested, mandibles clicking with anxiety. Captain Miller, who had insisted on joining the expedition, chuckled. "We are the security team." He patted the sidearm holstered at his hip, causing observer Nix to flinch visibly. As the ancient doors slid open with a groan of protesting metal, bright lights automatically flickered to life inside, revealing a vast chamber filled with technology that appeared both impossibly advanced and oddly familiar. "It's some kind of laboratory," Reynolds breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "Look at this craftsmanship. It must be tens of thousands of years old, but it looks like it could have been built yesterday." Miller whistled as the team moved deeper into the facility. And the Council had no idea this was here? The ancients were known to have research outposts throughout this system, observer Nix admitted, but most were thought destroyed in the Great Collapse. In the center of the vast chamber stood what appeared to be a massive crystalline device, pulsing with a faint blue light despite millennia of dormancy. Its design was elegant yet threatening, like a beautiful predator. Thompson approached it with undisguised enthusiasm. "Would you look at that? It's still operational after all this time." Without hesitation, he began examining the control interfaces, his fingers tracing glowing symbols. Observer Nix froze in horror. "Stop. Don't touch that. That's..." The translation cut off as Nix switched to urgent communication with the Council ship in orbit. Reynolds approached the device more cautiously, but with equal curiosity. "It appears to be some kind of energy manipulation system. The core design reminds me of our fusion experiments, but far more advanced." Miller noticed Nix's agitation. "Something you want to share with us, observer?" Before Nix could respond, Thompson had already connected a diagnostic tool to the device. "The energy readings are off the charts. This thing could power all of Earth for a century with just a fraction of its capacity." Reynolds nodded, already taking measurements. "But I don't think power generation was its primary purpose. Look at these emitter arrays, they're designed to focus energy with incredible precision. What the humans didn't realize, what had observer Nix frantically reporting to the Council, was that they had just discovered the original prototype of the stellar disruptor. The very weapon the Void Harvesters were now using to destroy star systems was being casually examined by humans as if it were a curious artifact in a museum. In orbit above Mars, the Council ship erupted into chaos. Emergency signals flashed as representatives demanded immediate intervention. To their species, it was like watching primitive creatures play with antimatter. Back in the facility, Thompson had already removed an access panel and was studying the internal components. "The engineering is beautiful. Whoever built this was a genius. But I think I see some inefficiencies in the design.